We have some fresh new spy photos of the BMW X7, and this is supposed to be unveiled next year. And I think with each iteration, we see it becoming, getting closer and closer to what the final production version is going to look like. And I honestly think this is going to be maybe, I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but this could be the best looking BMW X5 since the original E53. I really like what I'm seeing here. It's going to have a lot of resemblance, of course, to the iX3, but this is going to come in 5 different powertrain options. There are even going to be a hydrogen BMW X5 with this generation. So we're going to have a look at these renderings here from BMW blog, Car Scoops, and the rendering from kolesa.ru. I think these renderings were done before these new spy photos came out. The BMW blog renderings are definitely more recent because you can see the taillights here looking way more similar to what we have in the spy photos right here. Before we jump in here and have a look at this in Photoshop, let's check out the article. I'm going to link all the sources down below in the description, of course. So check out this article from Car Scoops and let's see what this is all about. BMW's 2027 X5 finally shows its light and what's hiding inside. That is always going to be my main problem with the new Neue Klasse designs, is going to be the interiors with this panoramic iDrive. It's just not a step in the right direction, and I'm gonna hold firm on that opinion because I really feel like we're heading so far back when it comes to car design. Car interiors in general with new cars with all these pixels instead of physical buttons. But that is what we're going to get with the new X5. It's just the times we live in, I guess. So latest spy shots of the new BMW X5, they call it the G65, reveal its lights and redesigned interior. So you got to have the panoramic iDrive. Replaces gauges with pillar-to-pillar screen at the windshield base. Now, we talked about this before. BMW has already previewed what this interior is going to look like. And it looks like the concept that they showed at CES at the beginning of this year of this new interior layout is actually going to be almost exactly what they're going to put in the production versions. And we'll see. I'm going to have to wait until I actually sit inside this vehicle to see what I feel. But the initial impressions I have with this is that it's, first of all, too customizable and it's not user-friendly. It's not as good of an ergonomic design as just having, physical buttons. So 5 powertrains, including gas, diesel, hybrid, electric, and hydrogen for the new X5. And looking at these proportions, I think the proportions are what's going to set this X5 off. It looks great. The proportions look fantastic in my opinion. I also like the front end lights. It looks like we have some dynamic feeling here, with the indicator light being one of these 2 light elements that we need to see in every single BMW. We have 2 lights here, and one of them is going to function as the daytime running light and the indicator light in one LED, looking beautiful. And the proportions here with the A-pillar, we have a nice strong hood, clearly defined hood, and a very stately front end. Now, the thing I can't see here in the spy photos is if you try to see what the kidneys are going to look like, I don't know if we're going to get the same kidneys sticking down like this, like we have on the iX3, or if it's going to be more like a one single visor design. I would personally want to see it be the visor design for the X5. The iX3 looks pretty decent to me. I think the kidneys, as I said in the iX3 video, they look a little bit too narrow for me. And it would be cool to have the X5, the bigger brother, be more of a wider stance graphically in the front and stretching out the graphics by having this visor design that we've seen on some concept of the new Neue Klasse design. But look at these proportions here. Clearly defined proportions, 2-box design, and it has a nice, beautiful stance to it. I feel like this might actually take BMW back at the top when it comes to plantedness of their SUVs. Right now, Mercedes is 100% on top with that, with the Mercedes GLE. I have the GLE 450 for a week right now, and every time I look at it from a 3/4 rear view, I just fall in love with it over and over again because of the plantedness that we have, that sumo stance that I'm looking for. But this looks to have a very similar stance to the old, the first generation E53 4.6 and 4.8 versions, looking very, very good. But as you can see here, we have 2 different wheels, and these are definitely the wheels I would go with. We have these wheels right here, and then we have some different wheels in this prototype here. These are smaller, still looks pretty good, but this is a vehicle that the wheels are definitely going to make a massive difference in how this vehicle, the new X5, is going to look planted on the ground. So both lighting units follow BMW's new classic design language and bear a strong resemblance to those on the iX3. In the rear end, you have slim horizontal tail lamps. They look a little bit different than we have on the iX3. I'm not sure about the taillight situation here, because if you look at this, it looks like I have one single line here and then going into these single lines, very sharp lines in the rear end for the taillight graphic. And I'm not sure, it doesn't really follow the same thickness that I want to see in the LEDs that I have in the front. The rear end looks way weaker when it comes to the graphic design, and I still want to have some movement and some dynamic feeling for the rear end graphics, but it doesn't look like we're going to get that. And what I mean by that is I want to have the LEDs have some thick pieces going into thinner pieces, thick pieces, just have some fluidity in the taillight design. But here we can clearly see the taillight again, and the proportions from a side view looking beautiful. The front end, very upright, vertical front end, like we want to see in this. I really look forward to seeing what the new X7 as well is going to look like. If this one looks this good, the X5 already looks this stately, the X7 is going to be even more stately than this because it's a step above. It's the biggest SUV BMW makes. The crossover will embrace panoramic iDrive. We talked about that. A huge departure from the traditional instrument cluster. Has been replaced by a slender pillar-to-pillar display. There is also a digital instrument cluster in front of the driver. I do believe that is actually going to be part of the panoramic iDrive system. So I think a part of this display right here, you can see it at the base of the windshield, is going to be the gauge, sort of what they call now the gauge cluster. And the rest of this is going to be all customizable. So you can customize it with as many as 6 widgets. So we got widgets in BMWs now. Everything from compass to weather widgets to ones showing audio and navigation information. We can see some more details here. You can see we have probably the gear right here and the mileage as well. You have the gauge cluster in this area. And then you have the passenger side going all the way to the other A-pillar on this side. The passenger side being completely customizable is what I guess this layout is going to look like. You can see some graphics here as well. There is a new steering wheel with two-tone contrast stitching. Nice to see it. While there isn't much to see, the steering wheel will have haptic buttons. Just make them regular buttons like we used to have for the longest time. It worked just great. You can feel your way to what it is you're doing, instead of having these haptic and touch buttons that we have in a lot of cars today. Also a large central display right here. This is the concept that they showed at CES this year. So this is probably very, very close to what the X5 interior is going to look like. You can see just how empty everything looks. It's just, if you turn this car off, there is nothing to feel and appreciate in this interior because everything is illuminated by pixels in this case. And if you can't tell, that is not the direction I personally want to go in. But we've talked so much about this that I'm not going to keep complaining about it too much. The infotainment system will run on operating system X, promises to allow for greater personalization. This is also a problem I see with cars today. They're getting too, you can personalize them too much. So everything, you can make a BMW feel like a Subaru, for example, when it comes to all the apps that you can customize and stuff. So the brands themselves, they don't have a solid, unique statement from the brand of what they want their designs to be like. And that is the problem I have with too much customizations. And that is exactly what's happening here. If we turn these off, if we turn the car off, it's just an anonymous interior. There is nothing going on here. Everything is digitalized now, and everything is personalized to your liking. It doesn't feel like BMW is confident in their interiors and what they want them to look like, because it's so minimalist and so customizable, like they're talking about here. Now, the good news is we can see 4 tailpipes on these prototypes, which means that we're probably looking at the new X5 M60, and there could also be a range-extended iX5 REX with a range of about 621 miles. Now, that would be fantastic to see, but just look at how beefy this looks. These, I do believe, are older spy photos, because you can see we don't have the production headlights in this case, but we still have, of course, the same proportions. Looking pretty solid, to be honest. It looks very, very good. The rear end here, you can see we definitely did not have the production versions in this case. But with that said, let's jump into Photoshop here and have a look at these renderings. First of all, the front end. The biggest challenge I have with the front end here is just trying to figure out what the kidneys are going to look like. If you look at the graphics, this could just be, you know, some camo to fool everybody to think that this is actually how deep the grill is going to go. And then we have this visor design up top with the beautiful, look at how thick this LED is. I love to see it. Looks like we have some sort of shape for this LED as well. Looking beautiful, and looks also like we have a clear separation of the top half graphics and the lower half graphics. Very classic design for this Neue Klasse style, and that is the reason why I'm generally a fan of what BMW is doing with the Neue Klasse, because looking back the last 10 years or so from BMW, it's been sort of, you know, pretty much a mess when it comes to the design language, and this is definitely tying everything together. And now we have a red line going from the small sedans to the biggest SUVs, with a clear identity of where BMW wants this to go. Now, if we look at the rendering here, this is an early rendering, so it's not based on the newest spy photos, but this has more of an iX3 nose. And I don't think, if I look at the spy photos here, it definitely does not look like we have such small, deep grills or kidneys in the front end like we have in the rendering here, similar to what we have in the iX3. I do think these kidneys are going to be a lot more shallow in the X5. I really hope so, and I definitely want to see them almost be integrated in the same line as this overall framing for the top half graphics. The lower section, BMW is still probably going to have some quirkiness going on with the graphics in the lower section, because that is what BMW has been doing for a while. And it's probably going to take them a couple of years to just drop that weirdness for the lower half graphics of the design. But overall, I mean, the proportions is what's important here. The proportions are definitely back when it comes to BMW. Now, looking at these renderings from BMW blog, you can see that the grille here, for example, is a lot more shallow, and it also doesn't go as deep as it does in these iX3 based renderings. And I definitely prefer this styling from BMW blog. Of course, linked down below for this article, the full article, if you want to read it. And we can also see that the early renderings is definitely just iX3 taillights for the Kolesa renderings. But now when we have the new taillights and the new spy photos, we can see that BMW blog is probably on point when it comes to what the taillight design is actually going to look like for the production version. Love to see the quad tailpipes. This is something that is slowly coming back to performance vehicles. In cars in general, is just to have the visible exhaust pipe still intact, proudly shown in the lower section of the rear end. But these taillights, what I want to see here when I talk about dynamic feel is I want to have them be maybe a little bit thicker in this area, something like this. That's all that's needed to make it much more interesting to look at, instead of having them just be two thin lines like this and having the same thickness going all over this the key graphics in there, which is of course going to be the taillight design. So very interesting design from BMW, and I do think this is going to be, as I said, a very beautiful looking design. I think the Neue Klasse is going to suit the proportions and the sort of the size of the X5, maybe a little bit better than what we have on the iX3. But it's going to be unveiled next year, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what the actual final version is going to look like, and more importantly, how it's going to feel to sit in, not when the car is on, but how the interior feels to sit in when the car is off.